There could be more freedoms for people who've received 2 coronavirus jabs under plans being considered by the government.
The requirement to isolate if you've been in close contact with a positive case could be scrapped. And fully vaccinated travellers may not need to quarantine after returning from an amber list country. The Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, joins us now. Very good morning to you, Mr. Hancock. Well, it's good to talk to you off the back of that discussion about the football, because a lot of people thinking, hang on a moment, if the Scotland team don't need to isolate after one of their number has tested positive for COVID, how come whole classes of children are being sent home after one case of COVID in the class? Can you explain?
Well, of course, the Scotland team are in a bubble together. There are critical processes, obviously, that are written down, and I'm assured that they're following these assiduously. And they're designed so that the competition can go ahead. Now, thankfully, England and Wales are both through to the last 16, and I wish Scotland every chance. I really hope that they can get through as well. It would be great to have 3 home nations.
Yes, the whole point of a bubble, under your rules, the whole point of a bubble is that if someone tests positive in a bubble, then the bubble goes into isolation. But what you've said is there is a competition going on, and that seems to be trumping our coronavirus rules. Am I right?
Well, the rules with respect to the Scotland team playing in Scotland are written by and a matter for Public Health Scotland, and I'm assured that the Scotland team are following them assiduously, and that is a matter for the Scotland manager. But I also very much hope that we can keep this competition going, because it's bringing so much joy to so many people.
Yeah, but hang on, Mr. Hancock, you seem to be saying, well, hang on, it's football, let's keep the joy going. But we all want joy in our lives. Everybody wants joy in our lives. We want to go on holiday. We want parties. We want bigger weddings. We all want that joy. Why are you putting more priority on this football tournament than our safety and everybody's safety? Why is it one rule for footballers and one rule for others? And this is a very dangerous message. And you have said the nation has to come together, but we're not on this occasion.
Well, throughout the pandemic, we've had specific rules for elite sports to make sure that those sports can carry on, right? All the way through this winter, the Premier League continued, for instance, the Scottish Football League continued, and it did so by having specific testing regimes and specific rules around it. And I'm assured that the Scotland team are following those rules. So we put that in place for a reason, which is that, this winter was tough enough, even with the football on the telly. And of course we all want to get out of these restrictions. And, ultimately it is the vaccine that is the way out of it. But we have got a specific set of rules, both for elite sports, all the way through, and including the championships.
Okay, people are confused. It sounds like a 2-tier system with one rule for special people and one rule for the rest of us. You've mentioned the vaccination program. Are you going to create a 2-tier system where people who have been double jabbed get special privileges that are denied to those people who are not double vaccinated? For instance, would people who've been double jabbed be exempt from isolating if they are in contact with a COVID case, or exempt from quarantine if they come back from an amber list country?
Well, we do know that there's other countries that are putting in place rules for vaccination for travel, and we are working on looking at the reduced risk that you have if you've been double vaccinated, because there's a big reduction in risk if you've been double vaccinated. And now vaccination is available to everybody, so the most important message to everybody watching is, if you've had one jab and you haven't had 2, then please go forward and get your second as soon as you've had that 8-week gap. And if you haven't been jabbed yet, then all adults should go forward and get their jab now, because that is the best way for us all to get out of this. The jab is available now to all adults. And so we are taking clinical advice, for instance, on the isolation rules and whether it can be replaced with a testing regime. And we're piloting that at the moment domestically, and we're talking to countries around the world to see if there is a safe way to open up international travel, relying more on the vaccine than on quarantine restrictions. So absolutely, this is the right work to do at this point, because everybody now has access to be able to get vaccinated, and because the whole point of the vaccination program is to replace the restrictions on everybody's lives with the vaccines. That is the goal. That's what we're trying to achieve domestically as well.
We have to see some positive benefit in the double vaccination, beyond obviously protecting ourselves from COVID, because society is so disrupted. But can I ask then, you're being very positive about that, how come the Prime Minister yesterday, when asked about it, was terribly downbeat and said that actually travel this year is frankly going to be very difficult? I mean, that rather suggested to people that your optimism about us being able to book holidays in August is misplaced.
Well, I think the two are absolutely true. The travel is going to be difficult. It's going to be more challenged this year than in normal times. Of course it is. And we look every 3 weeks we look at what countries should be on the red list, on the amber list, and we are very cautious about putting countries on the green list, as you know, and we've talked about it before on this program. And the reason for that is to protect the recovery here at home, but it's right at the same time to do the work on whether the vaccine can replace restrictions and replace them potentially, for instance, with a testing regime. It's absolutely true that we're cautious on international travel, but it's also true that we're optimistic about the future.
Yeah, can families who are desperate to get away book a summer holiday in August to an amber list country if they're double jabbed?
No, we are not recommending that now. But I was asked the question, are you working on trying to get these restrictions released in the future? And the answer to that is yes. But now the rules are really clear, which is you shouldn't be travelling to an amber list country for a holiday. That's what the green list is for. And I appreciate the green list is a short list, but that's because it's the countries where we're confident that it's safe. And we go, because the ultimate goal, the most important thing is we've got to protect the recovery that we've got here at home, the freedoms we now have here at home, because of the vaccination program. We've got to keep that protected.
But could that change before August? The exemption from quarantine from an amber list country? Could it? Yes or no?
Well, we are cautious about international travel, but we are also working on how we can replace restrictions with the vaccine. And I know that your viewers get the difference between the rules that are in place now and what might happen in the future. And throughout this pandemic, we've been clear about things that we might be able to do and that we're working on, and just totally straightforward in answering your questions on that. Because this is it's unprecedented.
Yes,
but thankfully now we're on the way out.
But the reason we're in this situation in the first place, Mr. Hancock, is because of this Indian variant that was allowed in the country. When you were informed by Public Health England on the 1st of April that the Indian variant was under investigation, we could all see the pictures coming out of India. You were incredibly slow to come out and put India on the red list, and that's why we are in this situation right now, isn't it?
No.
No? Well, hang on, but you were informed on April the 1st that there was a variant of under investigation from India by Public Health England. Is that not true? Is that a lie from Public Health England?
No, this variant, the Delta variant as it's called, became a variant of concern actually after we put India on the red list.
But what about the variant on a
precautionary basis?
But there was a variant under investigation that the PHE told you about. And if you are going to go down the road of variant of concerns, which Boris Johnson told us was the actual measurement as to what you were looking for, India already had South Africa and Brazil as a variant of concern. Why didn't you shut them down straight away? You shut down South Africa in 4 days back in December. So why was India allowed to carry on despite it already having the South Africa and Brazilian variant concern?
Because they were in tiny numbers, whereas in South Africa that variant, so-called beta variant, was the dominant variant. So we acted ahead of when the Delta variant was called out as a variant of concern. Of course, there's variants under investigation all of the time. So we acted before the formal advice was that this was a variant of concern. We've acted firmly on the international agenda repeatedly. A couple of weeks ago, I was being asked the question, why have you put Portugal back onto the amber list from green? It's because we're cautious on international travel. We have been throughout. We were on India, we were on South Africa, we were on Brazil, and so too on
Hancock,
Portugal.
you weren't cautious on India. We all saw the pictures. Professor Susan Hawkins has said that when there is evidence of an epidemic in another country, obviously that is going to then be a problem over here. The fact of the matter is, and even Kwasi Kwarteng yesterday, the business secretary, said that you might have done things differently. I mean, we just acted too late in putting India on the red list, and the accusation is that's because we wanted a trade deal. Boris Johnson was planning to go out to India, and politics interrupted what we should have done. I just want to ask about the front of the main news in the Daily Mail this morning, which must be very uncomfortable for you. It's about the fact that Boris Johnson has put off the promise to fix the broken care system. Apparently, the Prime Minister was supposed to have a meeting with you and the Chancellor today to decide whether to finally bring in a cap on sky-high care costs. Why has that meeting been cancelled? And when are you going to fix social care? Because Boris Johnson stood on the steps of Downing Street and said that you had a plan. Where is it, and when's it being put into action?
So I'll answer that in a minute, but I can't let you get away with just reading out a load of stuff that is untrue and then turning to another subject. So just coming to this point about that's what I'm going to address, if you'll allow me to finish. Exactly. So it is simply not true to say that we knew about this as a problem variant before acting. We acted before we formally were advised that it was a variant of concern, precisely because we saw the rise in the case rates in India. Now, on social care, we are committed to, and we will deliver on, a plan to reform social care, and we'll do that, setting out the details this year. That's what the Prime Minister's committed to. It's in our manifesto. We deliver on our commitments, like we've delivered on the commitment in our manifesto to get Brexit done. We delivered on our commitment to protect the NHS in the height of the pandemic. We're delivering on our commitments to vaccinate now and to make sure everybody's offered a vaccine. It was meant to be by the end of July. We'll get it done by the middle of July. And one of those other big commitments is to deliver on that commitment for social care reform. The exact timing of the diaries is less important than the fact that we are going to deliver on this commitment. I'm talking to the Prime Minister about it, the Chancellor of the Exchequer about it, and we're working on that right now.
Can I just ask you very quickly before you go, how can you work for a boss who thinks you're completely, utterly useless?
Well, I don't think that that's the case.
We've seen the
working
WhatsApp
incredibly
messages,
closely together, as I just said.
We've seen the WhatsApp messages, Mr. Hancock. The whole world has seen the WhatsApp messages. So that is the case, isn't it?
No, that was ancient history, and more importantly, it was a time of enormous challenge and frustration, and we were working together on getting the testing capacity up. And by the way, we delivered that. I delivered that increase in testing capacity.
Has he apologised? Has he apologised for those messages? Has he apologised to you for those messages?
I'm not going to go. Unlike others, I'm not going to go into private conversations. The best I think is to say is that the government is running really effectively and efficiently now. Over the last 6 months, I think the public's noticed how that we are working as a cohesive team, and it's that team spirit that's going to get us out of this pandemic and then deliver on all the commitments that we've got, including, for instance, on social care.
Okay.
A meeting that was cancelled today.
Well, diaries are less important than delivering, and we're going to deliver.
Okay. Right, diaries are less important. You can't have a meeting without a diary. Matt Hancock, thank you so much for joining us this morning.